Hello, and welcome to episode 49 of the Naked Eye podcast. This is Nathan Oxenfeld, coming to you today in February 2021. And in today's episode, I'm really excited to be joined by Bill Parravano, also known as the knee pain guru, and more recently involved with the Camella Foundation. And our conversation does centralize around this main topic of pain in general, but more specifically about knee pain with Bill's experience and also eye pain with some of my experience. And I thought the timing of having Bill on as a guest on the Naked Eye podcast this month was perfect, because this month's episode of the Better Eyesight podcast, where our guest Ainoa De Federico and I read through the February 1921 edition of Dr. Bates's Better Eyesight, the whole topic or the whole theme of that whole episode is pain. And so Dr. Bates was talking about pain and how to reduce and relieve pain using the Bates method exactly 100 years ago. And now Bill and I get to continue this conversation a century later in 2021. So I just love how this timing all works out. So I'm really excited for you to listen to today's episode. I did want to mention, I just mentioned the guest of the Better Eyesight podcast, our other podcast, Dr. Ainoa De Federico. She's actually organized this amazing global holistic vision summit, which is actually happening February 16th to the 19th. And she's gathered like 30 speakers from 20 different countries, and myself included. I'm really excited to be a part of this really exciting event. So it's a free event during the time of the summit, so 16th to the 19th. And then I think you have an option to actually purchase replays of all the talks, because it's going to be some amazing content and this amazing panel of speakers and natural vision teachers and even optometrists and ophthalmologists. And these you really want to check it out. So if you go to my website, I'll have links to it straight from my website, integraleyesight.com. It's a really exciting event. And as a conclusion of the event, we are actually doing a free screening of our new documentary that just came out in 2020, Vision 2020 From Eyesight to Insight. It's the title of the film, and we're really excited to be actually showing it for free as sort of the conclusion of this big summit. And we're going to have a little Q&A and discussion afterwards with myself and the other people involved in making the film. There is also going to be another opportunity to watch the film for free. We are screening it at the Bates Association of Vision Educators event at the end of February as well. So on Friday, February 26th at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, which is 3 p.m. in the UK, which is where the event is being sort of hosted, even though it's an online virtual event. Once again, there's going to be a cool panel of vision teachers holding a discussion leading up to the showing of the film, and then you'll have a chance to see the film for free then as well. So there's a few of these exciting things happening this month. One other thing that I've got going on in February is I am teaching my workshop as a part of the Color Lights World project. A few episodes ago, I interviewed Gabrielle from Austria, who is the founder of this new Color Lights World project. She got up and running at the end of 2020. And this year, 2021, is really the year where all the presenters get to teach their full classes and workshops and Zoominars. So we've already had a couple amazing experts go so far, and we've got much more to come throughout this year. And my workshop is actually on Tuesday, February 23rd at 12 p.m. Eastern US time. And so you do have an opportunity to attend live. It is 20 euros to attend the workshop, whether you want to go live or if you sign up, you actually get a replay of it. So even if you're not available at that exact time, or if you're hearing this after the workshop, you can purchase the replay as well. So all this stuff can be found on my website. That one specifically is at integraleyesight.com/colorlightsworld. And I'll have links to those documentary screenings right from the homepage as well. There's also some more exciting stuff coming up in March, but I'll save that for next month's episode. But for now, let's dive into this conversation with Bill Parravano. All right. So welcome, Bill, to the Naked Eye podcast. Really happy to have you here and excited to see what our discussion is going to lead us into around some of maybe the topics of pain and body mechanics and relationship with even the eyes and vision as well. So really happy to have you here. And would you maybe like to take a moment to introduce yourself a little bit in your own words for us?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Nathan. I'm glad to be here. Appreciate the opportunity. And well, I got involved in what I'm doing as far as helping people online with knee pain. It was an unexpected journey. I had no intention of going into body work or helping people with pain or any of that. My introduction to all of it came through my own knee injury. In between December of 1998 and May of 1999, I dislocated my left knee 4 times and ended up having reconstructive surgery on the ligament in my left knee. And in my mind, it was, well, the doctor is going to fix the ligament that was torn, and I'm going to be right back out doing judo, which was my main love at the time. And like nothing ever happened. Thinking of it like changing out brake pads or new tires on a car. It was going to be like that. Just fix what was broken or torn and I'll be good to go. And it didn't quite work that way. Who we are as human beings is so integrated and so interconnected that I found that there was a big gap between having something mechanically sound, meaning on an x-ray, a CT scan, or an MRI, everything's going to be normal. Mm-hmm. But the person, or in this case, myself, I felt horrible. I felt like an 80-year-old man in my late 20s.
Yeah.
And that really started my journey towards exploration and study and self-discovery of how the body works very differently than the average doctor or physical therapist out there is going to perceive it to work.
That's really cool that moving beyond that, I guess maybe materialistic or mechanical kind of view of looking at the body or the system, and then expanding it into these other factors that might not be quite as maybe measurable or detectable with machinery.
They're not apparent.
Yeah.
It's like, how does water have an effect on the rest of the body? I had no idea at the time, or how food does, or how water and food can get mixed, like the signals that the body is, we think it's hungry and it's actually thirsty. So we eat instead of drink the water. And then we end up getting more dehydrated as a result of eating the food. And then that dehydration begins to affect the joints and how it shows up as arthritis. Like, that's a big disconnect that's a lot of dots to connect that isn't apparent off the bat. We have to look at not from a specifically scientific model. We have to go from a common sense perspective on what we're looking at and dealing with in our own physical bodies.
And that's a really good example with the thirst and the hunger, because I remember when I first learned about that, it was kind of a game changer of like, that feeling you get, and then, oh, okay, let me just drink some water first and then give it a minute and see how I feel and how that affects it. But yeah, that map or that path from one dot to the next and making those connections. Luckily there's people like you who can help people make that connection and realize these things. And similar to your story, my entry into this vision work was from a personal place. I just wanted to fix my own eyes, just kind of like you wanted to fix your own knee. And then maybe through some of what you've learned and explored, you realized, wow, maybe I can help some other people with this. So is that kind of what happened? You kind of started on that personal level, and then you started. Yeah. What came after that?
At the time I blew out my knee, I owned a computer company. And there was a lot of stress in that industry, owning a business that functioned in that capacity. It was very cutthroat. And there was a part of me that didn't want to do business that way. I didn't want to feel like I always had to worry about so many aspects of in the conventional business world, inventory and employees and customers and people stealing from you. And it was just so crazy. And as I began studying about the body and realized that there are people who make livings doing body work, I was like, well, that sounds like a lot simpler life. I'll just can work with people one-on-one. That would be much more appealing to me than all the stress that I was dealing with in the conventional business world. It's something that I didn't want to deal with anymore. So there was an evolution of me selling the computer company and go pursuing this interest. I pursued learning about the body partially because I wanted to get back out on the judo mat and throw people again. Mm-hmm. But also there was a huge component of like, my life would be a lot simpler. I was just interested in learning this stuff. So that began or continued my journey in that direction. And the more I learned, it's quite the rabbit hole. When you begin seeing these connections between different parts of the body, the more I was fascinated by how the body worked, the more I was like, oh, wow, look at even all of those people that are studying body work, they're getting caught up in a lot of minutia that doesn't really affect the essence of what we're looking at and getting a person feeling normal again.
Mm. Well, I really like how part of your motivation was to achieve this level of simplicity. And also what I was also hearing was like, you were needing more relaxation in your life too, of just like, the stress of that industry or that work. That's another thing that I'm sure will keep coming up in our talk today is the relationship between just general stress in life and then either vision problems or physical pain somewhere in the body. You've been sort of come to known as the knee pain guru. And, I know you shared that you had this personal experience with your knee. So it definitely seems like that's kind of your focus or your specialty, but are you working? I mean, you've mentioned body work a couple of times. Like, do you want to kind of share a little bit about sort of what your process is or your protocol is or how you kind of work with people?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. When I first started getting into body work or healing myself, my own journey, I was studying an osteopathically based style of body work called orthobionomy. Orthobionomy, when I went into my first class, the instructor said orthobionomy was founded by a British osteopath who was also a judo instructor. And I was like, oh. Then she continued on and said, and he took the principles of judo and applied it to an osteopathic concept of comfortable body positioning and developed an entire style of body work. Although I owned a computer company and had no body work experience, I'd been studying judo close to 15 years at that point. So I understood the principles of judo, which is, the path of least resistance. Your opponent pushes on you, you don't push back, you pull. The same respect, your opponent pulls on you, you don't pull back, you push, while maintaining your balance, and the opponent ends up throwing themselves. Mm-hmm. So these were the principles that the founder of orthobionomy was applying directly to the physical body.
Oh, wow.
And so it is maximum efficiency with a minimum effort. What can I do in the kneecap that's going to have the biggest effect and change in the physical body? So that philosophy and principle permeated through to the eventual development of the program that I offer clients online. And as I experimented on myself, that extra glass of water and how that made a difference. If I tweaked my diet a little bit, how that made a difference. If I incorporated these supplements, how that made a difference in terms of what was the fastest way. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. And a lot of times you have people that are stuck in the idea that, well, if I strengthen the muscles in the legs, maybe the pain will go away. Well, if you stop for a moment and think about what causes physical pain is caused by nerve irritation. Bottom line, end of story, from the stress and tension that we hold in our bodies. So if we can get the pressure off of those nerves that are being irritated, you're going to get relief like that.
Yeah.
We don't have to wait weeks or months to think maybe it'll change just a little bit.
Right.
Because we're doing the very thing that's going to make the biggest difference at this moment in time. And then we start setting up the conditions around that experience in the physical body of comfort. So we look at water, nutrition, breathing, mindset, stretching, strengthening, mobility. That's the environment that you create once you develop the sensitivity and awareness of how to create comfort in that part of your knee or your body. So I'm essentially helping adults, because the majority of them are adults, remember what it was like being a kid. And like, because when my daughter hurts herself, she just goes, Dad, this hurts right here. So I position it till she tells me it doesn't hurt anymore. And I hold it until she tells me I'm good. And then she goes off and lives her life. But as we develop as adults, they get these perceptions and listen to all of these people, what they say, have these expectations about how their knees are going to feel, what the doctors and physical therapists tell them, what they're supposed to experience in their body when they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And then they buy into that belief. And a lot of times it's just undoing those beliefs to create comfort and set up the conditions. So now the body does it on its own. And it does it very fast.
I love that. That's amazing. That's so in line with what I'm doing with Vision, Bill, in terms of when people feel like they're having trouble seeing or they have the blur or some vision problem, kind of like you said with the knee, it's like, oh, if I strengthen the muscles, I might get some relief. That's where a lot of people go with the eyes. They're like, if I can strengthen my eye muscles, maybe I can see better or feel some relief. But that's not what it's about. It's about, working with the nervous system. Just like you said, these irritated nerves. And with the eyes, we've got these big optic nerves that can have some irritation and tension and strain. What you said about helping adults remember what it was like being a kid, that made my inner child jump up in joy a little bit, because that's a big thing I'm doing with people's vision as well. We're learning we're remembering maybe what the world looked like before we got glasses, or maybe when we were little kids, or when we kind of saw things for the first time or had a certain sense of awe of the world or curiosity about the world. But then, like you said, not only we get older and we get these beliefs, but we also kind of like adopt a sort of like been there, done that mentality, and like, oh yeah, I've already seen that. Stoking that kind of childlike energy, I think is awesome. And yeah, when I was a little kid, I was so resilient. Nothing could stop me. I would just like hurt myself and fall all over the time. And like, how can we kind of tap into that and really see that energy kind of coming back into our experience? That's really exciting to think about.
And I think a lot of parents put their beliefs into their children. Like I see my daughter's 7.
Yeah.
And she falls. She's a 7-year-old. Kids fall. However, I don't react when she falls. I look at her like, the poker face. Okay. You're going to have your experience of that fall. She may or may not cry. My first question to her invariably is, are you breathing? That's it. I ask her, is she breathing? Now, sometimes she'll fall and she'll start crying. My next question to her is, are you scared or did you hurt yourself? Because sometimes she's crying because she's scared.
Yeah.
Other times she's crying because she smacked her knee pretty hard on the ground, or whatever the case is. So I need to let her have her experience, because if she injured herself, then I need to be there. Then I need to step in, and she's going to know.
Yeah.
She's trusting in herself more, that she knows if she's hurt or if she's just scared. Mm-hmm. A lot of times she tells me she's scared.
Yeah.
It scared her. Okay. What do you need?
Yeah.
Now I empower her to, like, do you need dad to step in? Do you need me to hold you? Do you need me to do something? Or do I need to get a Band-Aid? Like, we know what's going on then, because it's not like I'm putting my fear and my concern and my worry and my, decades of life experience on her. Mm. What happens is, when we learn this as children, and now we're getting older and we get a knee injury, we're believing those things that were told to us by the adults or the professionals, that now create this belief in these realities in our physical body that aren't necessarily true.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that example up, Bill, because as I was actually in the car this morning, thinking about our chat today, I was going to ask you about that. I was like, I've seen two cases where, a kid hurts themselves and, all the adults around, like, oh my gosh. And like, are you okay? Like, and then they start crying. But like, if they hadn't done that, like, would the kid have started crying? Like, it's almost like the kid was waiting to see the reaction of the others to see, oh, this must be bad, or I must have hurt myself or something. So yeah, that's starting, I think, getting into the whole mental aspect of pain, and I love what you said of the letting her have her experience of it without it being maybe overly influenced by you or brought by others. That's really special. And that distinction between scared and hurt, I think is critical too, because I'm sure those two get so lumped together, and if we can learn to separate them, that's kind of a cool awareness to have, that we may have, those have kind of blurred together in a lot of cases.
By dissipating the fear in the neurology, a lot of problems go away. Mm-hmm. A lot of people nowadays, across the board, knee pain, eye issues, otherwise, they're fabricating things in their own mind. Mm-hmm. We sit in front of computers, so we have this virtual reality of what is going on that we don't even know if is true. And people are running around like chickens without heads, making mountains out of molehills of things that they really need to be concerned about. And if it's like, what is right in front of us and what needs to be dealt with is what is on the table. And, if there's not a problem, why make one? And this is where a lot of people experience stress, tension, physical problems, because they are essentially making up these stories in their own mind. Their neurology is, amping themselves up. Like, how many people have panic attacks for something that didn't happen?
Right. Yeah. And that word story or stories, I think, is probably the key here, because it's like, that might be what the adult has that maybe the child doesn't have as much, is these stories that we latch onto very firmly. And there's a reason why we do that. I mean, to, kind of form our identity and our experience and everything. But yeah, when they get so gripped onto, I imagine that could even keep us in a state of pain or in a state of blur. If that gets kind of wrapped up into the identity.
Yeah. I had a client, occasionally I see clients in person. Mm-hmm. Doesn't happen very often, but I have one client that has moving in the direction of a frozen shoulder and working on her shoulder. And I'm there to support the shoulder in a position of comfort. In the position of comfort, you engage the neurology that fires at 286 miles per hour and begins to like focus and directed comfort will begin to move the body from a sympathetic or fight or flight state to a parasympathetic state at 286 miles per hour. It's pretty wild to think about how fast the neurology is. That's how fast a nerve fires. So I'm supporting this woman's arm, and she's like physically holding it up in the air. Like I could feel the tension in her arm.
Uh-huh.
And she's going, ow, it hurts there. And I was like, well, let your arm drop to the ground. Like, let it be a wet noodle. She goes like this. I'm still holding her arm. So now it's just being fully supported by my hands. And I was like, okay, how's your arm? I haven't moved it. Now I have not moved it even a millimeter. It's still in the same position. And she goes, oh, the pain's gone. How many people are unaware of the tension that they hold in themselves, not necessarily because of what is wrong in their physical body, but because of their idea of how, could be from a phone call they had, could be from financial stresses, it could be from relationship challenges, it could be from all sorts of other things in their life. They hold this physical tension, and now they go to exercise or they go to do something, and they just tweak just a little bit. And that's the straw that broke the camel's back. And it's not what they did was wrong. It was the fact that all the other stuff that they've ignored and not allowed their body to, you're going to like this one, see the reality of what's going on. And I do believe this really ties into what you talk about. I think people's eyesight goes away because they don't want to look at stuff in their life. They don't have the courage to look at things in their life. And it's not that anybody's bad or good or right or wrong for not looking at things. However, there are ramifications to those choices that are made.
Yeah. And you're right. I do think it does take a certain amount of courage or bravery to look at some certain things in life or in your experience. And maybe sometimes it's not about that. Maybe it's just, you don't have the resources or the energy or it's, some trauma-based thing. No matter what it is, the inspiring thing for both of us and what we do is that it's, I don't think ever too late to start looking at that stuff and starting to reevaluate things and not only change the body, but be changing the mind as a precursor and changing the beliefs and the thoughts and all those, mental patterns that kind of create the matrix for the physical, stuff to show up. In your research or your path, have you come across some of Dr. John Sarno's work with the whole back pain topic?
I've had lots of people that have worked with his programs that have asked me the same question.
Yeah.
And some people got some amazing results, and other people were challenged that it was, from my understanding, primarily focused in the mind or primarily focused in the thoughts. I think in a big way, yeah. I really can't speak educatedly on the Dr. Sarno's work, so I wouldn't want to speak out of turn. But,
yeah, some of the things that we've covered today, just kind of that it made that kind of pop up in my mind about how a lot of these, chronic back pains and stuff like that are also, connected in with the mental and emotional, backdrop. Why limit it to just the back or just one part of the body? It's like, it's the whole system. So,
well, I believe everybody, when they're struggling with some level of pain, there's a mental component to it. However, there's a spectrum of tools that need to be brought to the table.
Yeah.
That if we just look at it solely in the mind, you'll never get there. If you just look at it solely in the body, you'll never get there.
Right. Yeah.
So you have to look at how these things interconnect. Like a person can begin to get results, in my own experience with knee pain, they begin getting results And then their mindset comes into play to sabotage them in the process of their improvement.
Yeah.
People will stop doing it's like, oh, my knee got out of pain. That means I don't need to do this anymore. Right? Or they got 80% out of pain. And then they're like, okay, that's good enough.
Right.
And then it comes back and then they're frustrated like they were when they first started, but even more because now they think nothing works. Or they got to a place, they got some improvement, and then the pain comes back and then they give up. It's like, it's information. The body is not like this static thing. It's constantly changing. Maybe you need a little bit more water. Maybe that extra glass of wine the night before is affecting how your knees feel today. Maybe you pushed it too hard on the walk a couple of days ago or something like that. So these are all factors that need to be brought into the equation and look at it in a rational and balanced way without the emotion that is going to, throw a gutter ball. We're going to end up over on the side going, well, I don't know why none of this stuff works. I've tried everything. Well, no, you haven't. That's not true. We have to take a step back and go, what was working to the point that it didn't work? So everything was working up to that point. Something happened right there. If we learned what happened right there, now we've progressed you further. Exactly. We've added another thing into the equation that does work. And your mindset is playing a huge role in your ability or inability to see what that is. And that's where getting help or support by someone like yourself or someone like myself to be able to go, oh, well, let's just make this little tweak because I'm drawing on 20 some years of experience and you're drawing on a number of years of your experience as well to go, oh yeah, I've had like dozens of clients run into this issue.
Yeah. Like you said at the beginning of like, you're here to try and make this a more sort of efficient process for people and like that straight line idea instead of the meandering. I run into very similar things as well in terms of the challenge that people run into where they're getting improvements in their vision and then either it slows down or they backtrack or the blur comes back. I love what you said about how pain is information that's meant to kind of help us navigate this path. We can look at blur that way too. So if blur is information, if you're getting these improvements in your vision and then you have this really blurry day, what is that telling you? Exactly like you were just kind of walking us through, like what could have potentially, been a factor there, as opposed to seeing that and being like, oh, I'm a failure. I'm going to stop and just give up now because it's like, but it's challenging. And especially when you're doing it, on your own and you don't have that support, it can be a little easier to kind of get off track. And so that was a really helpful thing for me to be able to have conversations with my vision teacher and ask her why I was getting off track and what I could do to get back on track. And without her, it may have been a little easier to just kind of slide and not really follow through with it.
Totally. So I got a vision story for you.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
This should be, so I been in martial arts better part of 3 decades and have gotten hit a number of times. So I've have astigmatisms in both eyes. So little irregularities. And I learned through asking different people, ophthalmologists, and what I found out was I was concerned about my eyesight getting worse in the winter. He was indicating to me that the location of my astigmatism is right outside of where my pupil is. So in the summer, when the pupil constricts because of increased light, the pupil doesn't encompass the astigmatism. But in the winter, when it's more gray and there isn't as much light, the pupil expands. which incorporates the astigmatism and makes my eyesight worse. Pretty cool, huh?
Now, I noticed in my own journey and my students' journeys how there's these seasonal cycles with vision.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really cool take on it, of how the light levels and the environmental conditions can actually affect the size of the pupil and create these kind of like summer vision, winter vision kind of like thing. Yeah. And it also just kind of goes to show the importance of maybe carrying some sort of light therapy practice with you through the winter time. You know, like whether it's an artificial light or a sun lamp or red infrared light or something, or just bundling up and getting out on those sunny winter days and, you know, inviting the pupil to constrict down. But, you know, that line of thinking wouldn't just go from summer to winter. It would also go from day to night.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So you've got these like long-term rhythms, short-term cycles, and how it's also connected. I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask if you had any, you know, vision stories, whether personal or with any of your clients over the years, or just, you know, any general stories. And you've already shared a couple awesome ones so far.
That was my vision story. There's some work that we could do in orthobionomy. There's work we can do specifically on the pupils, or not on the pupils, on the eyeballs. The eyeball consists of the 6 muscles that change the shape of the eyeball, which helps with focus. And I had a woman one time that she wanted me to work on her eyeballs. The eyelids are closed, of course, and we're working on the tension in the eyeballs. And she felt so relaxed and all of that. And she got up off the table after working on her for a little bit. She put on her glasses, and she couldn't see out of her glasses because the relaxation that took place as a result of the work that I did changed her vision.
Yeah.
So as a result of the tension in the eyeballs that were making her, you know, continue the eyesight to be worse. So she was a little concerned at the time because she had to drive home, but her eyes eventually readjusted to the glasses. But it points to me like the same kind of crutches that we end up using that we get from the conventional medical model, that once you get your eyeglasses, then it inhibits the eye's ability to get better. Just like orthotics for shoes. You put orthotics in, you wear those all the time. Now we make the arch lazy. So it limits the body's ability to integrate the changes that can take place, like I mentioned before, at 286 miles per hour. So things can improve very quickly.
Yeah. And what happened for that woman is like maybe the eye muscles relaxed, her refractive error decreased, meaning like the diopters would have decreased in her glasses, meaning that when she put the original ones on, they were overcorrecting and it was like too strong maybe. And if maybe she would have had, you know, in an ideal world, some weaker pair of glasses to put on instead in that moment,
right?
Who knows, maybe her eyes, instead of adapting back to the original pair, would have adapted to this new lower pair until maybe her next session with you, and it gets even more relaxed and keeps on dropping down. But yeah, that's kind of the infamous line that you hear at the eye doctor's office is you'll get used to it. When you get glasses and they feel a little too strong and you're having trouble seeing through them, you will adapt to them, and
you get headaches and
right, exactly.
You don't feel so good. I get you. Yeah,
that's so cool though. That's exactly what, you know, my aim is, or my goal is with all of my students is helping people achieve that physical release and relaxation of those 6 eye muscles. Through a combination of, you know, physical things like movement and sunlight and palming and stuff, but also through activation of the mind. If I remember something really pleasant and clear, maybe that will calm my mind down in a sense that will achieve that release of the muscles that she experienced with the help of your work. We can even tap into that stuff within potentially. And I just love the timing of having you on today, because on my other podcast, the Better Eyesight podcast, this month, the whole theme where we were reading Dr. Bates's magazine from February 1921 was all about pain. And so literally 100 years ago to the month, there was this publication put out, by Dr. Bates and his team there about this pain of the eyes, pain of the body, how we can control pain, how we can reduce pain. And I'm really excited for you to listen to it whenever you get a chance, because I'd be just curious to hear maybe some of your thoughts on some of these 100-year-old articles, and then also some of our kind of updated commentary on it as well. One little extract from that I wanted to just share with you is that Dr. Bates was saying how most of our senses are continuous. Mm-hmm. Like we see and we hear and we smell and feel and taste things in a continuous manner, but pain is not continuous, meaning that it's not permanent. There are moments where it disappears and then it comes back and disappears. And he was saying that if we can find that moment where it disappears, and in that space work with our memory and kind of connect in with a clear visual picture, it can maybe extend that space and maybe extend it out. And it kind of reminded me of what you were talking about earlier about this whole cultivating comfort and seeing how we can kind of find maybe a little spaciousness within that mess there. And how do we kind of let that out? What would you say about that sort of continuous versus non-continuous, especially in the case of something like chronic pain, where it's in the name, it's in the definition of it's like it's always there. So like what's your take on that?
There are a number of things that are popping into my mind. I'm trying to like wrangle them in. I don't believe pain is continuous. That in the mind of a person in pain, it feels that way. Mm-hmm. There's a spectrum of pain. Mm-hmm. That's why they ask on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your pain today?
Right.
But if they tracked it, if they did a statistical analysis of their pain every day throughout the day, they would see it fluctuates. It's not consistent. And our emotions blur that interpretation of how we feel right now. So a person that will have 6 days out of pain and then today they're in pain will say, I'm always in pain.
Right.
So that's what I was talking about, as far as we have to use pain as information. And we cannot allow ourselves to be at the whim of the pain, which ties right into what you were just saying. If we can extend that experience, what you were saying, Dr. Bates said, we extend that experience of the comfort. We extend that experience of the comfort. What ends up happening is we now, we're not attached to the experience of the pain, which means our worry about feeling the pain again can actually cause us to subconsciously, unconsciously hold our breath and bring the pain back. So now, if we disconnect the experience of pain from what actually is going on, and this ties right into what I was saying regarding how we fabricate stuff in our lives, how a lot of people are fabricating stuff in this virtual reality, creating the problems and worry and stress and all these experiences that they think they're having, that they believe they're having, but in actuality, if we were to look at the data, they're not. It's the same concept. It's the macrocosm, microcosm kind of thing that some people, it shows up as physical pain in their body, Other people, it's stress and tension. Other people, it's achiness. Other people, it's their eyesight. Other people, it's knee pain. It's all the same experience. It's all a very similar theme in our human experience of what's going on.
Yeah, and I think another thing probably about human experience is we kind of focus on the negative in the sense of, I personally am only really aware, well, how do I say this? Like if I get a scratchy throat or if I get a cold or something, like that's when I'm aware of my health. You know, I'm aware of how I feel when I'm feeling not so great.
Mm-hmm.
And then those days where I'm feeling great and feeling fine, feeling healthy, it's like I don't even think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that, like you said, if you're like in pain for 6 out of 7 days, like on that one day that you're not in pain, you might not even think about it or notice it. Whereas those other 6 days, that's all you focus on and think about. And
Sure.
that's, you know, it's kind of natural to kind of focus in on discomforts and areas that aren't working well. But it also kind of reminds me of some of the work of like network chiropractic or network spinal analysis. It's like this alternative version of chiropractic work, which when you go see a traditional chiropractor, sometimes you're like, I hurt here, and that's kind of where they adjust you. and so the focus is on where the pain is. Obviously it's not that cut and dry and simple. It's all, they've got their protocol. But with this network chiropractic, it's like, okay, the question is, where do you not feel pain? Where is there ease in your spine? Where is it feeling comfortable already? And how can we kind of tap into that and let that spread, and maybe deal with the pain that way? So it's sort of just like a different approach, I guess.
Well, there's a little bit of a trap because our neurology is hardwired to look for the threat. Our sympathetic nervous system is designed, like, is this bad or good? Like we're a deer in the headlights, that kind of experience. And that's hardwired in all of us. And that's real easy to default to that level of existence.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it takes discipline and courage to go, oh, that was just the initial response from how my neurology is wired. I'm going to disconnect from that. And how can I relax myself? What can I do for self-care with the scratchy throat, with the knee pain, with the eyesight getting blurry? What tools do I have that I could remember, that I make into a habit so I don't have to think about it anymore? It's a second nature experience of like, oh, got a scratchy throat. I'm just going to start taking a lot of vitamin C. And that should knock out my scratchy throat, because I'm taking steps to empower myself. And I'm also not going into the fear of the tension which is going to manifest the cold or whatever to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point too. Like to kind of not beat yourself up about just the way that you're wired and how we all are in a sense. And knowing that that's part of it, and that we can also work with that and work around that. And we're not, I like what you said earlier of just like, we're not totally at the whim of that. It's part of the story, but we've got some agency to work with as well.
Sure.
And I know that I'm feeling pretty inspired today after our talk to just continue to maybe revisit my definition or my belief around pain, physical pain, emotional pain, treating it as a little bit more of like a teacher or a feedback system. And, I'm going to start asking myself the questions that you ask your daughter next time I bonk my knee on something or I get hurt. Like,
you're afraid.
Am I actually feeling pain, or did that just kind of frighten me or scare me, or, like, is it a fear thing or is it a pain thing? And this has been really cool to kind of get me thinking differently on some topics. So as we start to wrap things up, I did want to just mention the fact that part of the reason why we're just to kind of shift gears a little bit, part of the reason why we're chatting today is because you and I recently reconnected on Clubhouse.
Yes.
And you and I, we're both local in Western North Carolina, and we had met several years prior, but with the new advent of this new app called Clubhouse, we reconnected and got this set up. And I'm excited to be a guest on your show as well. And so I wanted to give you a moment to just let people know about the stuff you have going on. But I also just wanted to I haven't really mentioned Clubhouse yet in any of my podcasts or videos or anything. And I mean, it is still a new thing and not really sure where it's going to go, but just to let people know, if you are on Clubhouse, me and some other vision teachers and maybe Bill will get involved as well. We're hosting some regular talks on Clubhouse. It's an audio-based app, sort of like a live streaming podcast, where you can come in and listen to people chat. You can even ask questions and interact. So we're getting into the rhythm of every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. My colleague Claudia Muhlenweg, based in Los Angeles, and myself are kind of the two vision teachers, but we invite and Victor Mifsud, also a vision educator in Canada. We've just been getting other people, acupuncturists, maybe people like yourself, Bill, to come in and just kind of like we did today,
sure,
just having some casual conversations and stuff. So it's in Clubhouse. It's still in the beta mode, so it's invite only and it's only for iPhone. But I don't know, maybe you'll hear me mentioning this in the future with more things happening on Clubhouse once it becomes more open to the public and in more places. But yeah, I don't know. Did you want to mention anything about Clubhouse, your experience so far on there? It's been kind of fun to pop around and listen to different conversations and stuff.
Yeah, some conversations are more inspiring than others. It's definitely the Wild West, so to speak, as far as chat rooms.
Yeah.
It's organizing, and it's definitely some networking opportunities. I think it's more of a 2021 version of the Chamber of Commerce networking meetings to go to, which I think is kind of cool, and gives an opportunity to share what you're doing. So I like it in that respect. I do believe I'm a different generation. I'm an older generation, so I don't default to social. That's not my default. So it's a little bit of a learning curve for me, getting out of my comfort zone. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
So
cool. Well, other than Clubhouse, how can people get involved with what you're working on and your podcast and your website and everything? How can people find you?
Certainly. I'm online as the Knee Pain Guru, so you can Google search the Knee Pain Guru, and I definitely come up. I've been doing it for 13 years online. And I'm also having a newer project that is, it's a nonprofit called the Comella Foundation. It's Comella, COMELLA, thecomellafoundation.org. And I have a number of different alternative healthcare practitioners as well as medical doctors involved in it. And it's all around helping people with chronic pain in general. So we're really bringing resources in one place and helping with education and training right now in a virtual environment to help people relieve their pain, and got a podcast going over there called the Pain Education Corner or the Pain Education Podcast. It's on the Pain Education Corner on the website. So we're that's in development. And Nathan, we're going to have you on here shortly, and we're going to talk about eye stuff and how eye tension relates to pain in the body, which will be interesting to kind of pick your brain, get into a little bit more nuance of what we talked about today.
Yeah, I can't wait to dive into that with you even more too. Just this sort of systemic effect when the eyes relax, the body relaxes, and vice versa. And so we'll have some more stuff to cover, I'm sure. Cool. Well, yeah, definitely for people listening, check out Bill's work. Go to the website, check out the new podcast, and a lot of cool resources on your site to check out. And yeah, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you taking some time to chat with me today. Maybe we'll get something else going, but in the meantime, I'll look forward to meeting up with you again soon for being on your show. And I'll let my listeners know how to get that once that's available as well.
Perfect.
All right, Bill, thank you so much.
Thank you, Nathan.